We begin. We are holding a mimer from Shabbos Parshas Pinchas, Mevorch Machoidish Menachem of Tavshin Lamed Daled. So in this week's parsha, we learn about the carbon Tamid. There's the Tamid Shel Shachar, the Tamid that's brought in the morning, and there's the Tamid that's brought in the afternoon. And afterwards, we also learn about the carbon musaf, that's or the special carbonis that's brought every chodesh, every Rosh Chodesh. And we're going to speak about the significance of these two types of carbonis. Cholus Tamid Ha'asui B'Har Sinai, a constant and consistent oila that's made at Har Sinai. We'll explain the significance later in the Maimer why it says B'Har Sinai. Even prior to this, it says Shnaim Layoim Oila Samid. Twice a day you have a carbon oila that's brought constantly. As a kevas echad tasu boiker. One sheep, one lamb you make in the morning. As a kevas hasheni tasu ben aboim. The second lamb is made in the evening, in the afternoon. Or maybe quite Sadmar Tzemach Tzedek Boira Toira Lashoin Oira Toira Rava Magid, and the Tzemach Tzedek in his sefer called Oir HaToira brings the language, a quote of the Oir Toira, similar, not quite exactly, of the Mezritcher Magid. Skip over the parentheses. Ksiv, it says, Oilas Chodesh B'Chodshoy L'Chodshe Ashana. In addition to this, it says also that you have to bring an oila for the month in the month, meaning in every Rosh Chodesh, according to the months of the year. So why is it called? It's a very interesting language. Oilas Chodesh B'Chodshoy. It's a carbon oila of the Chodesh in its month to the month of the year. What's it mean in its month? Ki b'chol Chodesh yesh tziruf acher. In every month there's a different combination, the Shem Havaya v'chein the Shem Adnai, of this name Yud Ke Vav Ke, and so too the name Aleph Daled Nun Yud, that it shines, that godly life force of the name Yud Ke Vav Ke shines in different combinations according to every month. So one month it'll be Yud Ke Vav Ke, another month it may be Hey Yud Vav Ke, a third month may be Vav Hey Yud Ke, etc. And the same thing, Aleph Daled Nun Yud, and that's it. That is a combination that takes place over 12 months. So every month has a different combination of these two names of Shem Yud Ke Vav Ke, indicating it's a different type of godly revelation that shines in the month. So because there's a different type of godly revelation that shines every month, according to the different combinations of the names of Hashem, Kain hu aliyas hakarbonos v'pratis. That is the way of the carbon oil, of the elevation of the carbonis specifically. That, like we'll soon explain, that even though it's identical, the actual carbon, but the level that it attains and the level that it has to do with is a different level. Hainu, this means according to the combination. The different combinations of the months of the year, so it is the manner of the carbonis. So this is something that the Tzemach Tzedek brings from the Mezritcher Magid. So now the Tzemach Tzedek has a question about the statement. Tzemach Tzedek asks a question on this, seemingly it's not understood what the Mezritcher Magid wrote. According to the different combinations of the Hashem's names, meaning according to the different divine revelations, that is the manner of the elevation of the carbonis specifically in every Rosh Chodesh. How can that be? The offerings, the special musaf carbon that was brought on Rosh Chodesh is the same whether it's Rosh Chodesh Kislev or Rosh Chodesh Tammuz. It's all the same set of carbonos that were brought for Rosh Chodesh. Even though the combinations of the godly names are different for every month, So how can you tell me that the ascent of the carbon corresponds to the different combinations? If the carbonis are the same, and the godly combinations, the godly life force that comes down is different combinations of the godly names. And the Tzemach Tzedek explains, one must say that the different types of elevations that every carbon accomplishes in each month specifically, so the intention that's of the bringing of the carbon is different in every Rosh Chodesh carbon, even though the actual carbon itself is identical. So even though it's the same amount and the same type of animals and the same type of offerings, still in all, the intention is a different type of intention of what you bring a carbon, a musaf, a carbon on Rosh Chodesh Nisan versus the musaf carbon on Rosh Chodesh Tammuz. That the intention in every Rosh Chodesh was according to the godly revelation, the different combinations of the name of Hashem that's in that month. Now the Rebbe is going to add to what the Tzemach Tzedek says, that in Karbonis, more so than in other mitzvahs, Kavanah is primary and is more important to the actual performance of the carbon and the performance of the mitzvah of the carbon. We can add in this according to what it's known. Now when it comes to Karbonis, the intention is a primary concept. Mishnah, like the Mishnah states, L'shem shisha dvar mazevach nizbach v'chulu, that there are 6 things that a person needs to have in mind what he is bringing the carbon for. That the kohen has to have in mind he's bringing it for a particular individual if they're bringing it. He has to have in mind that it's going to be eaten by a certain time and not outside of a certain time. It's eaten in a certain place, not outside of a certain place. So you see the idea how intention is very much a core part of the carbon itself. Another thing that we find of intention's connection with the carbonis, v'gam oimnim l'inyan carbonis, the leiv bezdin masna leim. It's brought down concerning the carbonis that Bezdin's mind makes certain conditions about them, and it's dependent upon whatever the conditions Bezdin's mind had in mind. Hainu shetoli b'leiv v'kavonis haBezdin. It's dependent upon the heart and the intentions of Bezdin. Another idea that shows how kavana, how intention is primary when it comes to the karbonis. So befrat shakravas hakarbonis yadia kehanim, especially that the offering of the karbonis is through kehanim. And we know, according to Kabbalah, and Chassidus brings this down, sheikir avidosam hi b'machshava v'kavana. Their main service is in their thought and in their intention, even though they're actually, deep involved with the karbonis and everything has to be done, but it's a mind avodah. It's something that's taking place in their mind. K'maimer, like the statement of the Zohar, kana b'chashoi, the Kaihanim, as opposed to the Leviim. The Leviim would sing and they would play musical instruments, but the Kahanim did everything quietly. And they did it uberuusa the liba, with their will of the heart, meaning the intention of the heart. In other words, the Kayanim's performance of the avoid and the karbonis was again, and something had to do with the kavana, with the intention. So that's the Rebbe's insert into explaining more what the Tzemach Tzedek said about how kavana plays such a core and primary role in the bringing of the karbonis. Therefore, even though the actual karbonis are identical every Rosh Chodesh, but the intention is different every Rosh Chodesh, and therefore it corresponds and has to do with the different sirufim of the names of Hashem, the different godly combinations of Hashem's name, that has to do with the different elevations that take place. Now back to the Tzemach Tzedek. The Tzemach Tzedek brings an example how we can find identical karbonis with different intentions that accomplish totally different things. Afterwards, the Tzemach Tzedek brings an example from this. what's explained in a different place concerning the sacrifices of the 12 heads of the Shvatim. At the end of Parshas Nosai, it enumerates in the dedication of the Mishkan, the dedication of the Mizbeach. It speaks about what every single Nasi brought, what every single head of a Shevet brought. This is what the head of Shevet Yehuda brought as a carbon to dedicate the Mishkan on day 1, on Rish Chodesh Nisan. This is what the head of Shevet Yisachar brought on day 2, on Beis Nisan, etc., etc. And the Chumash goes through all the details and repeats every single detail of the Karbanos. Shekol HaKarbanos Shalom HaYishav. On the one hand, they were identical. All the 12 days of Nisan, every single Nasi brought identical Karbanos as the other Karbanos that were brought throughout those 12 days of dedication. If so, the question arises, if they were identical, why did the Torah have to explicitly state the entire carbon of every single leader, of every single Shevet at length? Instead, he should have just said, after saying day 1's carbon, the carbon of the Shevet Yehuda, he could have said, V'chein hikriv Nesanel ben Tzur b'yom hasheni. And so too, Nesanel, the son of Tzur, of Shevet Yisachar, brought on the second day of the Chanukas HaMishkan. And then the same thing he could have said the third day. The Torah, we know, is very exact and doesn't say unnecessary words. Why was it necessary for the Torah to say every single detail of what every head of a Shevet brought if it was identical to the day before? But the point behind it is, like it's explained, because in every carbon of every single head of a Shevet was a different godly hamshacha, a drawing down of godly and divine energy, unique and specific according to the root of his particular Shevet. Yehuda knew what particular godly energy had to come down connected with Shevet Yehuda, the Shevet of Yehuda, the head of Shevet Yehuda. Therefore, his intentions was completely vakavona b'fnei, and the intention was completely distinct and unique, having to do with his Shevet. Like it's also explained explicitly at length in the Medrash Rabbah on the Parsha of Nesiim, meaning at the end of Parshas Nosai, Shakavon Eitzel Kol Nasi Haisa Acheres, that the intention by every leader of the tribe was different, and the Medrash goes into explaining what exactly each one was intending and what they were hinting at, and so on. So therefore, we find this idea, we find this concept that you could have identical karbanos, but still in all, they are completely different intentions. So just like it's that way concerning the karbanos of the Nesiim, that every single Nasi brought an identical carbon with totally different kavanos, with totally different intentions. The same thing, he says 3 lines from the bottom, from this will also be understood concerning the karbanos that were brought on Rish Chodesh, that the Afshem Ma'isa Kol HaKarbanos Shavim. Though in action, the actions, the way and the animals, etc., was brought, all the karbanos of every month, of every Rish Chodesh was the same. It's supposed to say karbanos with a nun. Mikol Makim HaKavona B'chol Chodesh Haisa Boifen Shoina, but the intention in every month was in a different way. According to the different combinations of the names of Yudke Vavke and the name of Adnai that's connected with this particular month, so their intentions were different. So the Rebbe adds in the last line in the brackets, we could add to this, the change in the different combinations of Hashem's names that shine in every month, that's distinct from what shines in a different month. Mashpia gam al gashmius ha'olam, that it's also gashmius ha'olam, it also influences the physicality of the world. Like we know concerning the change of the seasons. We usually talk in secular books. We usually talk about 4 seasons, but in the Torah we have 6 seasons that are explicit and ferocious because of. There is a season of zera, of planting and sowing. V'kotzer, there's a season of harvest. V'koyer, there's a season that's called cold. V'choim, and hot. Then there's a kayitz, there's the summer. V'choyref, and then there's winter. And the chol kufay bas beis chadashim kidis b'gemara. If you have 6 seasons over 12 months, so then it comes out every season is 2 months long. So the fact that there are changes of seasons in such a way, in every month there is a specific matter that's connected with this particular month, and therefore based on these particular types of hamshachas that change over every month, so eventually when it comes together over 2 months and 3 months and so on, so then you have the change in the physicality of the world as well. So it's not just that it impacts the karbanis, it actually, since the entire world stands upon the avodas hakarbanis, it says, so therefore it influences the world as well. I do not recall the kavanas being explicitly stated anywhere concerning the Rosh Chadashim. There is a whole medrash that says about the karbanis of the Nesiim that he mentioned before, but I don't know. Maybe in some Kabbalah Sfarim it's brought down the different intentions. I'm not familiar with that. Second paragraph on the second page in the Maimer, that he continues over there in the teaching of the Mizritcher Magid, Shekeinu ba'olos Rosh Chodesh Shalias HaKarbonos Ilifiyayif Natziruf, that this is only by the oila that was brought, the carbon oil that was brought at the Rosh Chodesh, the beginning of the month, that the elevation of the karbonis is according to the godly combination, the combination of a godly name. But it says in the pasuk, milvad oilas hatamid, except for the oila that was brought every morning and every evening, that even though it was identical, over there was no changes of karbonis. Shu inyan klalas kulam derech. The oilas hatamid is the general level. It includes all of them together. In other words, it includes all the karbanos of all the entire year, hainu shu tamid b'shavim, or it includes all the tzirufim and all the hamshachas. That means that it's always equal every time. So again, the Tzemach Tzedek elaborates on the teaching of the Mizritcher Magid, Sham, in that place where he explains it, that he means to say, Shebechinas oilas tamid, the oila that was brought daily in the morning and the evening, it's a level that includes all the 12 different combinations of the name Yud Kei Vav Kei and the name of Aleph Daled Nun Yud. Shekol Inyan Hayud Beis Sirufim Zeo Kishemeschalk Lepratis. All the entire idea of the 12 combinations of Hashem's names. That's only when you divide the Hamshachas into details and specifics. But there's a level that includes all of the Hamshachas together. And this is also the order of the Psukim. Klal koidem laprat. Like in general, you go from the general thing and then you go into the specifics. The Betchila, now in Karm Tamid, Atamid Shu Aklal. Initially it says in the Torah about the Karm Tamid that that's the general. And Vacharkach in Oil Resh Chodesh Prat, and afterwards the carbon oil of Resh Chodesh, that's already the detail. Third paragraph on the second page. It continues in the teaching of the Mizritcher Magid over there. In the Torah there is also specifically 613 mitzvahs. In other words, he's going to give an example that Torah also has this klal and prat relationship, the all-inclusive general level, and then there's the specifics. Shezeu tachlis l'midat Torah, the goal and the purpose of Torah study, God libet shemev they might. So the greatness of study is that it brings to action. Leida prati kima taryag mitzvahs, to know the details and specifics of the fulfillment of the 613 mitzvahs. Ubederach klala, in general, aseres hadibris, the aseres hadibris hainu, aseres hadibris hemaklal, that the aseres hadibris are the general part. The 10 Commandments are inclusive of everything. Vataryag mitzvahs hemaprat, and the 613 mitzvahs are the details of the 10 Commandments of the aseres hadibris. And the Tzemach Tzedek brings about this, what is brought down in the Medrash on Parshas Koirach. And if you might remember, Rashi actually mentions the following point as well. Rashi brings down this concept that he's about to say in the name of the Rab Sadia Goin, known by his Rosh Tevis the Rasag. If you count the number of letters in the Aseres HaDibros, there's 613 letters. Keneged Taryag mitzvahs. These correspond to the 613 mitzvahs. And the Rab Sadia Goin, I believe, if I remember correctly, Rashi says, actually enumerates which mitzvahs are connected with which one of the Aseres HaDibros. I think that's what Rashi says. So we see how Aseres HaDibros is the klal, the general, just like the Tamid Korban is the general, versus the Reish Chodesh Korbanos is the details. The same thing, the general thing is the Aseres HaDibros, and the details is all the 613 mitzvahs. And then he's going to go up and make it more inclusive and more inclusive, higher and higher. And he continues over there in the teaching of the Rishon Magid over there, called Aseres HaDibros. Klulus b'dibra rishon da'anoichi shua klal. All the Aseres HaDibros is included in the first statement of anoichi, that's the klal of the Aseres HaDibros. So now the Rebbe is going to explain what Mezritch Magid is saying by taking it one step at a time. We could explain this. We know that the Aseres HaDibros were all included in the 2 first commandments. Like it's brought down in Tanya, it says in Tanya, quoting what the Chazal say, that the Yidden only heard from Hashem's mouth only in specific, Anoichi Hashem Elokecha, I'm Hashem your God, and you should not have other gods before me. The rest they weren't able to handle, and they asked that Moshe Rabbeinu should tell them the rest. And the Alter Rebbe explains why specifically these 2 were the Yidden Zoicha to hear, because by hearing these 2, it included everything else. Because the statement and that I am Hashem your God includes all the 248 positive commandments. And the statement of Hashem, they should not have any other gods before you, is inclusive of all the 365 negative commandments, and that's what Alter Rebbe explains in the earlier chapters of Tanya about how every Aveda, transgressing any Aveda, is like Avodah Zarah, because it's all a part of the La Yelecha. V'nimtza comes out, again, working our way up. First we said the Aseres HaDibros is a klal for all the 613 mitzvahs. Then we have comes a step higher, Shagam Beis Dibros Rishonim Sem Klal Gab Aseres HaDibros. Now the first 2 dibros, the first 2 commandments, are a inclusive and general thing for all the rest of the Aseres HaDibros, which means by extension also the 613 mitzvahs. Now let's take it a step higher. Amna Marigam Beis Dibros Elu Gufa, but also in these 2 statements and these 2 commandments. It's still divided into 2 lines, 2 approaches. The positive and the negative. The active, the passive, what you should do, what you should not do. So therefore it's still not the true klal. It's still already a matter of detail. True, it's not all the details of the specifics, but it's a detail in the fact that there's negative versus positive. So then higher than that division of asay and loisay, positive commandments and negative commandments, because there is the all-inclusive level that's beyond any type of division, not even the division of yes and no. That's why the Mezritch Magi continues, that all the 10 commandments were said together in one statement, in one commandment, that's Anoichi. That all the commandments is included in the first commandment of Anoichi, because that's the general one, more inclusive even than the first two. We could add to this, according to what's explained in the Zohar, the Tevis Anoichi Roimes al Anoichi Misha Anoichi. The word Anoichi hints at Hashem's being that's beyond any description. I, who I am. It's a level of Hashem's essence that is not hinted. For sure, it's not in the name. It can't be described or invested in any name of Hashem, and it can't be described not even by a single letter, and not even by a point on top of a letter, which, if you remember, Igeres HaTshuva speaks about that the point on top of the Yud that hints at Keser. We're not just talking about that the first commandment of Anoichi Hashem Elokecha includes all the rest of the 10, but Elateva Rishoina Anoichi, the first word of the first commandment of the 10 commandments, which is Anoichi, that's beyond and higher than the names of Yudke, Vavke, and Elokecha that follow the word Anoichi. This is such a great general level that's beyond the entire category of general and specific. Because since we're dealing with Hashem's level, that's Hashem's very being, that's beyond being even hinted and described by any type of name or any type of symbol whatsoever. Now, using that as an example for what we're talking about over here, a similarity to this type of different stages of how there's the 10 commandments are klal for the Taryag mitzvahs, and the 2 commandments are klal for the 10 commandments, and the 1 commandment is a klal for and the Anoichi is a klal for everything. So in a similar vein, we have how Rosh Chodesh is a klal for the month, but it's a prat, it's a detail when you're talking about the korban tamid. A similarity to this is in Rosh Chodesh, a kol Rosh Chodesh, every single head of a month, hari'af shelegabe oilas tamid, though in comparison to the daily korban oila. Hareu nikra prat, we said it's only a detail because every single month, 12 months, 12 different aspects and revelations of Hashem's names, as opposed to the Oilas Tamid is a general, all-inclusive elevation of the Korbanos. So that's only in comparison to higher. Like, for example, let's say Aseres Adibris in comparison to Anoichi. But Aseres Adibris in comparison to the 613, that's a klal. The same thing, Rosh Chodesh in comparison, the Korbanos of Rosh Chodesh in comparison to the daily Korban Tamid is a detail. But in comparison to the rest of the month, as we're soon going to explain, it's a klal. The kol makom still in all. Legabe kol yimei hachodesh u klal. In comparison to all the days of the month, it's considered something that's all inclusive. Sharehu rosh chodesh, since it's called the head of the month. Harosh hakoilol kol prati yimei hachodesh. When we talk about the head in lashon kodesh, it means it includes all the details and specifics of the days of the month. Okay, it's explained in many places, especially in the Sefer, the Mittler Rebbe of Ataris Rosh. That is the place that it speaks about Rosh Hashanah, and it introduces us to the concept that's brought about all over Chassidus, that the head, just like the physical head, includes all the different all the different energies for the rest of the body, so too the head of the year, Rosh Hashanah, includes all the different energies for the rest of the year. And the same thing, the head of the month, the Masha Nikra Rosh Chodesh V'lo Tchilas HaChodesh, the reason why it's called the head of the month, not the beginning of the month, just like why is it called the head of the year, not the beginning of the year. It's similar to the head that includes the life and vitality of all the limbs. So the same thing, the head of the month includes in it the vitality and energy of all the rest of the days of the month. So Rosh Chodesh, in comparison to the rest of the month, Rosh Chodesh is the klal, the general level, and the rest of the month is the details. That's only Rosh Chodesh in comparison to the rest of the days of the month. Ach mikol makim l'gaba oilas tamid nikra b'shem prat, but still in all comparison to the daily carbon oila, it's still considered a detail because every single month that we bring the Musaf of Rosh Chodesh has a distinct intention and different than the other month, and has to do with a different combination of Hashem's name, a different revelation of godliness. And the Mizritcha Magid concludes over there, the Zeu Inyan Oilas Tamid Ha'asui B'Har Sinai. That's why it says the oila, the constant oila that's made on Har Sinai. What is this about being made on Har Sinai? This means to say the Inyan Atamid Haklal Shalamaylam Chala Pratim, the idea of the Tamid, which is the rule that's higher than all the details, the general part that's higher than all the details. Shor Shayu B'Har Sinai, its root is in Har Sinai, B'Dibur Anoichi Kanal, in the utterance of Hashem, in the word of Anoichi, just like the word Anoichi includes all the Asar Sadibros, which includes all the 613 mitzvahs. The same thing, the daily Karban Tamid is Asuya B'Har Sinai. It includes all the Karbanos Rosh Chodesh of the rest of the year. Now the Rebbe is never happy just with the mystical meaning of things. The Rebbe always wants to know what is the practical application of all of this. What is, in other words, what is considered a general avoida, an all-inclusive avoida, and what is an avoida that is specific and detailed. Ubir the Indian explanation of this matter is b'avodas adam in the service of a person. The idea of the service of a karbanis in general is to be found in the service of a person by himself. Like it says, Adam ki yaakov mikem. We had this in a mimer previously. A person that will offer from you. It doesn't say Adam mikem ki yaakov, a person from amongst you, Klal Yisrael, that will bring a carbon, but rather Adam ki yaakov mikem, that you have to offer a carbon from you. Shetzarach lahakriv me'atzmai, that a person needs to bring a carbon from within himself. And so that's the avoid of a person, the inner karbonis that a person has to do. What is the general type of avoid of karbonis? The oilas hatamid. So he says the chlolos avoid zuhi avoid is amsiris nefesh. The general aspect of this avoid is the avoid of self-sacrifice. Kemoya carbon shemakrivi Hashem, like a carbon that he offers up to Hashem. Ukemaimer, like the Zohar says, Raza the korban oilat Raza the insof. The mystery and the secret and the mystical meaning of the karbanos reaches all the way to the most mysterious and secretive levels of the Ein Sof, of the infinite. Meaning, sha'oilo l'mayla mayla. That's what it means. He offers himself up. It goes up to the highest of the high. In this itself, in this offering up to the Ein Sof, there is the general level, it's beyond all the details. But it's not just enough to have the general devotion, but everything has to come down into details, into practical. Afterwards, there's the way it comes down to details. The general idea itself, like the oilas tamid, that is the self-sacrifice that's beyond measure and limitation and boundary. He's going totally beyond any limitations. But this has to be made practical also. One has to, you have to afterwards draw it down into details. We have to bring it down in a service that's connected with the limitations and boundaries of time and place. That's the idea of the service of davening that takes place daily. That is the avoida of karbonis. And davening itself, which is similar to the karbonis, there is an order. Initially, the verses of praise. Afterwards, the brachas recited before and after Kriyat Shema. Afterwards, reading the Shema, that's the idea of the love of Hashem. Like we say in Kriyat Shema, you should love Hashem, your God. And the Zohar says, there is no service like the service out of love. So in other words, that's the ultimate idea of the service, the apex of the epitome of the service. Afterwards, there's a second parsha of Krishma. Until the tefillah of Shemoneh Esrei, that when we talk about that the tefillahs were established, Keneged Karbonis Tiknum, they're talking primarily about the carbon Tamid. That's why we have Shachar and Mincha for the Tamid Shel Shachar and Tamid Shel Bein Arbaim. And specifically in the davening, when Chazal used the word tefillah, they meant, we use tefillah in a very general way. When Chazal were talking about tefillah, there is tefillah, there's krishma, there's psukkah, there's imra. Tefillah, in the expression of Chazal, it's talking about Shemoneh Esrei. What he's calling here tefillah sa'amidah. So the tefillah of Shemoneh Esrei, that corresponds to the carbon tamid. Ubezeh nichlal ina bakashas rachav. In the tefillah of Shemoneh Esrei is included requesting one's needs. As we know, we look through the entire Shemoneh Esrei, it's about asking for one's needs, most of the brachas. Afterwards, we come to the tefillah of mincha, Keneged Tamid Shel Bein Arbaim, that corresponds to the afternoon carbon tamid. We know that the tefillah of mincha has a unique quality. That to you, Hashem, I raise up my soul, the koy al tefillah mincha, that it's referring to the tefillah of mincha because it has a special quality of giving a gift to Hashem of one's own self, to rip himself away and drag himself away from all their worldly involvements to daven mincha. Through this we elevate all the matters of this world that we engaged in throughout the day, from below to above. As it's known, that the davening is like a ladder standing on the ground that Yaakov saw in his dream, and its head reaches to the heavens. Meaning, it's like a ladder that you're going up higher and higher. And then afterwards we draw down all of the hamshachas, all the divine revelations down here below. Lastly, is Baruch Dir to make a home for Hashem down here below. In this low world that there's nothing lower than it. And all flesh will see together that the mouth of Hashem spoke. The bias Mashiach Tzidkenu b'karav mamish, and the coming of Mashiach Tzidkenu speedily mamash.